know. That isn't that just
Awesome.
devil's work, but I will go with this.
Hey, Ken, can you, where it says outline, can you move that to the side? Because on my screen, I have only half of the,
Oh,
hold on.
How's that?
it might be, you know what, up at the
I got
top.
it. I got it. I hand moved it. I got it.
Okay. So that's our document.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the one that I did some stuff to?
I believe so, yeah. And Dr. B, when you're in here, you can see new changes right here. So it would show you any, like if you want to see the full history,
Okay.
it'll show you all of the changes that people have made along the side here. And when they made it, what they made.
I see. I see.
So you just click on that view changes there.
Now, let me, again, just real quick because of the technology. Would I, if I wanted to use this with a class,
Mm-hmm.
would they allow you to do that? Could you have like 15 people log in?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a limit with the free subscription, but I think it is about 15. And if it's beyond that, then you would have to pay. But this is recording right now as well, Dr. B. So it'll save it as an MP4 file. So I thought I would email this as an example to Shannon later, since she couldn't be here.
That's right. Yeah.
That way she can see it.
That's good. That's very, very high tech. Very high tech.
So
Okay.
One last thing I'll share with you, Dr. B. I was telling Jen, I just went through a 2-week interview for this teaching job out in Kansas.
Why are you calling me Dr. B?
Force of habit. But I actually, I used Zoom like this for my lecture, and I minimized my picture on there, and I went through a whole presentation, saved it as an MP4 file, and then sent it out for the interview.
Okay, I kind of lost in the first few words, but point is that in January, when we I don't know, I'm hoping everybody can go. I don't know who can go in January, but when we go, I don't know, would there be any, remember, we only have 20 minutes. That, you know how quick that is.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any.
This is what we used to bring Jen in.
Was it Zoom?
Yeah, it was Zoom. We were just having issues because there was something up with their technology where they couldn't project the desktop. Or no, remember, they didn't have the sound or something. There was like something with their sound system.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but that's what I use because it's free.
Well, I think this is terrific. This is very nice. Okay. So, first of all, I would like to, I can move this too, or no?
No, you could, if you separate than this Zoom, if you open up a new window and you go to Google Docs.
I'll be right there.
I will let you move it.
You know what, Dr. B, since I'm in Pittsburgh, like we could do this together. Like, I'm not kidding. Like I could meet you somewhere, even at the university, and we could do this together, and we could, you know, and I could show you how to navigate it.
I would like to have somebody show me, because I think now, does this, we'll finally get to our paper in a minute, but how does this compare and contrast with Skype and Collaborate? Which are they about this? I mean, Skype is just visual, right?
Right.
I like this a little bit better than both of, especially Collaborate, but I like this better because it seems like it's more user-friendly. And when you're using a doc like Google Doc, like I can see Jen's in the document. All 4 of us could be in here right now working on it at the same time while we're talking.
Cool. Yeah, that's, now that, you know what, actually, I know you started to go into this about how to do that, and I waved you off, but maybe, maybe we do need to be able to all, no, I'll tell you what, look, I want you guys to be, my hair's messed up, I see. I want you guys to captain this as much as possible. So Ken, if you have control of this.
I do.
How about if you start from the top on the abstract?
Yep.
Work through and see where we're at and what we got to do, all right?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, you'll notice that I changed the title.
Yes.
How does that strike you all? Oh, and a lesson I relearned again this week. The title is oh so very important. Notice I say working title, because
Right.
I had a actually this should resonate. No, it won't resonate with you. I've inherited a cohort 8 student who hasn't finished yet. And yesterday we had a meeting, and Dr. Semich, who by the way is now today officially assumed as being dean of the school, and Dr. Fuller is head of the doctoral program.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
It's effective today. Anyhow, what I found out from this meeting is, we're struggling with this guy's chapter 1. And finally, Dr. Semich, who's on the committee, came up with a different title. And we looked at the title, and it totally captured what this guy wanted to do. And everything from that point flowed well.
Good.
So the title is really important. So let's take a good look at this. Does this title capture what it is that we're trying to present and write about?
I think it's very straightforward and really does. I mean, I like the fact that it captures dialogue, which pushes you right towards qualitative immediately. And I just think it's really well structured and direct.
Anybody else?
I agree with Ken. I think that it really does capture everything.
Well, how could I disagree with that?
Did you have any other thoughts, Jen, or do you think there's?
No, I think it's good, and I agreed with you 100%. The word dialogue right up front is what we're doing.
Well,
Right.
when we get down to it, if we work through this and we look at the guts of what we're going to do. We've sort of talked about, how we're going to go about this in terms of a focus group with us.
Would the word narrative work in there anywhere? And does it apply? Do you think it even applies?
Well, here's what I think. I think maybe we're kind of in agreement that kind of captures it. Why don't we work through the document? Because I think what's going to decide this is what we actually do, how we actually go about forming our research questions and protocol. I keep looking over here at you guys instead of looking at the camera. So I'm going to suggest that why don't we work through this a little bit and then go back and revisit the title.
Okay.
All right.
Fine.
So let's look at this abstract.
The purpose of studies.
Did we decide to use past tense? You guys corrected me on something one time. Is it past tense? The purpose of this study was? Or, okay.
Yeah, I think we thought that it would be easier that way as opposed to having to go back and change it.
Okay. Actually, yeah, it's fine. Pittsburgh is it's always unknown whether we're in the Northeast or Mid-Atlantic. I don't know what to say there.
Do you think it needs to say private? I don't know.
Yeah, when I see medium, I mean, I know what that means, but will they know what that means? Is that what you were thinking?
Oh, that should be at a medium-sized university. That should
okay.
be medium size. We are technically called a medium-sized university with our enrollment. I didn't even notice that.
And I do think that we're in the Northeast. Although
Okay.
I can look at that. I can look that up if you want me to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, these 4 students are members of the first cohort of doctoral students.
We were the first cohort of online doctoral students, correct?
Notice the shirt.
We see that. You should not have worn that because they're not doing very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first cohort. Yes, yeah, that's right. Online doctoral students. 3-year PhD in the summer of, is this correct? Summer of 2016.
Right, that's correct.
The professor taught 3 courses. Do I need to have that in there or not?
I think for me, it builds the relationship that we have with
Okay.
you. And I think it's important because it shows how much we did collaborate with you and work with you and how versed you are at speaking about this.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also that you were responsible for converting sort of the traditional, on-ground format to an online format for the university.
Yeah, 3 of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, a focus group was conducted among these 5 participant researchers to identify what instructional practices they found to be effective or detrimental to learning in an online environment.
Hey, Dr. Jim, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When you read that based upon the prior sentence, do you think this is our assessment of you or of the program? Because the way it's written now, it's almost like we're assessing you.
Oh, no, we don't want it to be that. So what do you need to change here?
I would say what instructional practices throughout their, curriculum or throughout their
Program of study.
right.
Oh, yeah, I see. You're saying it looks like you were looking at the courses that I taught.
Yeah, because we sort of talk about the fact that you were the one that sort of converted these 3. I don't want it to look like we're assessing you.
Right. Okay.
So throughout their program of study, they found to be effective, or is there a better way to say that?
You tell me. You were the students.
Becca, you're the instructor here for us. Do you think program of study
You
captures
can do program
the?
of study or doctoral studies.
Throughout their doctoral studies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
I
try
like
that.
Yeah.
I agree.
They found to be, Ken is questioning the word effective. They found to be effective or detrimental to learning in an online environment.
No, I think effective or detrimental was fine. I just didn't want it to look like we were assessing you.
Oh, okay.
We were looking
Gotcha.
holistically.
Okay. So based on the findings, see, this is where, we're writing the abstract sometimes before you actually do the study, not waiting till after, because we want this title and abstract to actually guide what we do. So it's kind of like working backwards in a sense, but based on the findings of this focus group, a questionnaire was then developed and sent electronically, I don't know if you want to use those terms, to the other.
Well, I have a question here right now, Jim. Are we going to say the other graduates, or is it okay for us to send it to the other members?
Well, it says sent to the other graduates of this first online cohort, as well as to the members of the other 3 online cohorts who are currently enrolled in the program.
Right, because other than the ones that you have writing this paper with you, we don't have any other
We didn't have
graduates.
any others graduate other than Lauren. Lauren
Lauren would be the only one.
Yeah. Like
Is
the
that
rest
right?
are still in progress.
4 out of the 12 is only the ones that only graduated. Something.
Right.
Wow, I didn't know
Well, 5 with
5
Lauren.
of the 11.
that. 11.
Oh, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Can we just put to the members of this first online cohort as well as to the members of the other 3 online cohorts?
Yeah, write that in, Ken. Do some.
Yep.
I like this. I can sit back and just. It's great.
To the members of this first online cohort, as well as to, members of the other 3 online cohorts who are currently enrolled in the program. Is that right?
Yeah, the only other thing I would say is the other 3, is that right? 3 cohorts, 13, 14, 15 we're starting this summer, I believe, right?
Yes.
12, 13, 14. I'll be teaching.
Will we want to send it to them? Do you think they'll have had enough experience whenever we launch this?
Well, here's the deal. What I was going to say is, I don't know the answer to that, but I was going to say in the abstract, who are currently enrolled in the in different time frames or different, you know, some are working on first semester coursework and the others are working on dissertation. Cohort 13, for example, right now is working on their whole study. So let me ask you this. Do you think that, you know, we don't have a huge pool of students that we're going to be drawing
Can you
from.
just put as well as members of subsequent cohorts currently enrolled in the program?
Yeah.
Hey, Becca, can you see this? Would this be okay? Based on the findings of this focus group,
Okay.
a question was then developed and sent electronically to the members of the first online cohort, as well as to members of 2 other online cohorts actively enrolled in the program.
I think that works great.
I have a thought.
Okay.
To go with what Becca was saying, well, they've had enough experience. So I think last year when Becca, Shannon, and I and you were working on the first presentation that occurred, we were where, or just about where cohort 13 is. So that's one thing. But I think Becca brings a really good point. Will 14 and 15 have had enough experience to speak in this? I mean, is that gonna,
I think,
I don't know.
I agree. I think 14 would, but I don't know that 15 would. That's why I put 2 other cohorts.
Yeah,
Because
that's, I
would-
noticed that. When do
That
you
would
think,
be
when you're
13 and
thinking-
14.
that gets back to a date issue. When do you think we're actually, you know, we have to come up, there's my bread machine, hold on, it's beeping.
Is that in your office?
No surprises, none. With Dr. B, there's none.
Oh my gosh.
I'm definitely going to be sitting beside you because I want some of that bread.
I got this bread machine, and I got to tell you, it makes tremendous bread. It really does. Yeah, I call it office bread.
Hey, Jen and Becca, I would think after our first year, I would have had a good feel for what I liked and didn't like.
I agree.
Do you think that would have changed based upon your second and third years at all, or no?
It may have.
Okay.
I don't think it would have changed much, but I mean, depending upon who the instructors were, maybe a little bit, but I think I would have at least had a perspective.
Well, that, you know, one thing I'm thinking about is on the questionnaire, one of the questions we're going to have is basically, I don't know what cohort are you in,
Right.
but if they are in, for example, cohort 13, so let's assume that we send this thing out by, I don't know, just draw a date, July, I don't know, to August. Some of the people in cohort 13 are going to be at different parts of that dissertation. Some are still going to be struggling with chapter 1. Others will have completed data collection, you know, so we need to also indicate on that questionnaire and ask them where, if you are in the dissertation process, which stage you in. Now, the reason I say that is that when it comes to interpreting the results, we may want to, look at that little devil there. What is he doing?
I'm just going to type this as a note for a reminder to us. So there'll be like a note that's in here. That's all.
That's good. Yeah, good. Okay. Okay. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to find. I don't know. It's like even cohort 15, right? Let's assume when we get to our time schedule, this is going to answer some of these questions. But even cohort 15, let's assume they will have only be enrolled in 2 classes, my class and Dr. Fuller's class, right? However, they maybe would have something to offer in terms of even initially what they found to be effective in terms of instructional practices. You know, maybe that's where we lose, some students right from the beginning. I don't know.
I would agree with you because I think you probably have a number of students. I can even think of one from our cohort who were transitioning from experience in an on-ground suddenly to online, and there's such a difference in the instructional techniques that you're using. that I probably would have been much more vocal initially or at the end of the first year about what I did and did not like. And a lot of that softened through the experience of just realizing this is just the instructional format that we're in, you know, and so this is what you take, this is what you get from it. But I think you're right. You probably are losing, even if it's just like, let's say less than 10%, it's still probably one person that you lose who realizes, I do not like this at all, and I don't think I can make it work for me.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that when you guys do the literature review, who's ever doing this part, there's got to be something that talks about the fact that being in an online program requires more self-discipline.
Yeah, it requires a lot of self-regulation.
Self-regulation, that's a good term, yeah, because I noticed, for example, and maybe, see, somewhere at the end of this paper, we might have reflections. We might have instructor and student reflections or something like that. Because remember, we're using the term dialogue in the title. I don't know. Actually, when you think about it, we're in a dialogue right now. This is we're doing part of this study right now. We are in a dialogue talking about what really matters in a program, how we should go about it, etc. Okay, so dialogue at this point still holds up. The last term, the first, what was it? First 8 weeks, second 8 weeks of the spring. This is the second time it's happened to me. Simultaneously, I was teaching master's level statistics on ground and doctoral level statistics online. And I will say this, as much of a proponent that I am of online teaching and learning, because I think it offers distinct advantages over on ground. As I've said before, I think of online learning as a circle where everybody has equal access 24/7, and you can get actually into more depth of discussion, I believe, in online than on ground. However, with the particular course of statistics, I was able to compare at the same time and saw that, you know, let's face it, for some people, statistics is not a great thing. And it's probably one of the tougher classes that any student ever has. And I saw the difference between the on-ground class where the students that didn't understand anything, I had them right there. And I could, you know, talk to them. I could see in their faces. I could sort of work with them. And the online group, this cohort 14 that just finished statistics, I had to give the first C I've ever had to give in the doctoral program, and 2 Bs. And that it was primarily because lack of collaboration, lack of jointly working on problems with their teammates, etc. But the question is why? And I believe that it's because they felt so lack of confidence in statistics that they weren't even willing to get out there and talk to their teammates. Whereas in the classroom, I was able to, you know, draw them out right there. So that's one of the things I personally, when it comes to, you know, reflections on online teaching compared to on ground, I think I'm in a kind of a good position for that right now, having taught both online and on ground simultaneously.
Hey, Jim, do you think any of that could have been reflected less about you and more about the technology limitations that might be there? So if there was better technology for the students to really work together and partner together, do you think that would have helped?
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the things they didn't take advantage of, I could not, honestly, I never had a situation like this in any cohort. I can think of these 3 people very rarely collaborated in any way. And when I say collaborate, I mean, you know, on Blackboard, how we interact and stuff like that. But they also had no interest in collaborating using Collaborate,
right?
Because they didn't want to have to be there at the same time. They wanted that flexibility of online learning, which is why they went into the program.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm talking from the end forward, because what we want to end up with, I think, is maybe we're probably by definition, I think Becca brought this in about somebody that transferred from on-ground online and all that. I think by definition, we're going to have to be doing some comparative thinking in relation to online and on-ground. It's almost like when you talk about qualitative research, it's difficult because of history, how to talk about qualitative inquiry without contrasting it with quantitative inquiry.
Right.
Now, it's interesting because I think we mentioned somewhere down here when we do a brief comparison between online and on ground.
Oh, that's right. Good.
That there's no, like, one advantage of online in a discussion board is there's no back row. So everybody has to participate, or it's evident that you're not. However, I have found, even through teaching online, that when it comes to collaborative projects, it's easier to hide in the online classroom. Unless you're using something like Google Docs, which I've had to start doing so I can track every participant's time that they actually, in contributions they put into the project, because otherwise it's like, well, I have so-and-so who's a rock star and does everything. I'm just gonna, you know, work on my own stuff and let them handle everything. I think it's easier to just hide and to skirt by based on other people's efforts when it comes to collaborative projects in an online.
It can be frustrating if you're that rock star and the other people or persons are not pulling their end of the way, because now you feel like you have to do their work. So I agree with Becca 100%. I think Google Docs, for the professor to be able to track who is doing what, I think is so important.
Well, you know, one of the things that I try to really emphasize with these students from the very beginning is the way they will be evaluated by their team members. 15 to 20% of their grade is confidentially, if you remember, confidentially given from team members. So
I hated doing that.
Well, you may have hated doing it, but
it.
the thing is that I tell students that I can't see everything, and I'm not going to put that all on myself. I will evaluate contributions, but your team members know more directly than anybody else. And if every team member knows up front, look, I'm going to be evaluated by these people I'm supposed to be working with. And maybe it's my job as an instructor to really hammer that home and say, look, I may not see everything that you're doing, but
you may want to stress too, because I know Jen and I, we had talked when we had a teammate that really contributed nothing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I think I'll give them a 60%. And she was like, you really feel like they gave 60%? And I'm like, well, 60%'s an F. So I was like, we were both trying to reason it through, and really he probably deserved a 20%, but I kept like transferring it to a grade.
Right.
I'm like, well, 60% still an F, which means he didn't really do much. I don't know, just hammering in, hey, let that grade reflect the amount of time that they're really contributing. If they gave very little, a 10% is what you should give them.
Yes.
You know, I think for me, the reason why I didn't like doing that, and the whole question behind evaluating my cohort members, is that I don't know the reason why. You know, it may be none of my business. So, and that's why I feel like the professor, maybe this particular student has reached out to the professor and said, hey, XYZ, whatever that is, that we're not privy to that. And then I grade that person based upon something that is completely unfair. So, but that's where you, I guess, as the professor, come in and say, well, Jen graded this person because of this, but I know better because of this.
Well, I've had several situations like that, but I would say this. I think as a and I can, you know, again, we're talking like this, and this is what actually is going to actually go in reflection somewhere at the end, because we're talking, we're in a dialogue right now as part of this paper. So it's flowing in a different way. I've had those situations, let's say in cohort 14 online, where, I mean, I have never been a cynical person. But I have to tell you, when I have 3 out of 11 students that one dropped out, 3 out of 11 students who did not, when I say collaborate, I'm talking did not collaborate, you know, online, conversations, discussions. And every one of those people had something going on in their life. Every single one of them. Some serious things, some things that they just decided that they didn't want to do it. Stuff like that. So when I assign those contributions, I always make clear it's an average between what your team members say and what I say. Now, and I'll be honest with you, if I would have gone entirely by what some team members had said, let's say at that point, I can't remember whether it was 15 or 20 points, I don't know what it was, but I've had team members basically assess somebody at 3 and 4 points out of 15 or 20, because that is the level that they help them in projects and online. And so then I'm faced with this, knowing that what their situation is and what happened to them. This whole thing of rigor in a program with compassion, etc. However, just like in the statistics class I just taught, as you know, a C is basically, you know, that's tough to recover from, a C. Could I have given that person an F? I could have done that. I truly could have given the person an F. But I know what that person went through, and the person did okay on some other stuff. A C is tough enough to take. And so this is good. This is like, when we get to our reflections, I'm wondering, see, I'm sort of spilling my guts out right now in terms of my reflections. How are we going to do this with you guys? Are you, I mean,
I was going to pitch an idea. I think we ought to come up with a questionnaire for sure that we work from when we facilitate the focus group.
Right.
But I almost wonder whether or not we might be able to use this technology, that we send out the invitation to everybody, see who accepts. Hopefully we'll get them to agree to do it, but do an online sort of conversation here, a virtual, since we're talking about e-learning. It would be sort of interesting. Focus group.
Can I say something? I'm sorry, just real quick. I think if I were in that position and you invited me to participate and I was still in the program, I do not think I would be vocal, because I wouldn't want to, because you have to work with those people for the rest of the program and you don't want to set that stage or tone. That's me.
The other thing is, when we, at least the way we have this written right now, I thought we had the focus group would be us, that we're in a focus group to develop the questionnaire.
That's right. That's right. My apologies.
And then the online, what do you call that thing?
The questionnaire.
Or whatever it is what we were going to send to the other people. That's the way I believe we have it written right now.
That's right. Yeah, my apologies. That's exactly right.
Well, I mean, but you raised, does everybody still think that's the way to go?
I couldn't divulge my personal stuff, you know what I mean, to my group members. I wouldn't be able to do that, my struggles and such, if I was still in the program.
What about well, I don't mean so much a struggle. Well, see, this gets down to the, see, we're kind of like in focus group number 1, actually number 2, I missed the first one. And we can talk about that, but I believe the next focus group, once we get this stuff straightened out, is actually the purpose of our next focus group should be to develop the the questionnaire, to talk about what is on the questionnaire. You know, what sections are we going to have of the questionnaire? What are the questions we're going to ask these people?
You know what, regarding our reflections, maybe those should stem from the focus group findings. Here's what they are. How did that compare to what we experienced through our journey? You know, is it spot on? Were there some differences? That might be a good way to structure it. Have us present what those findings from the questionnaire are, and then use those findings to then structure our reflections.
Oh, well, so you're talking about maybe pre and post focus groups. You're talking about the pre-focus groups that we're like having right now is what we're doing.
Right.
In a sense,
I like that idea. That's good.
The pre-focus groups is will culminate in our coming up with the questionnaire, which will then be sent out via Question Pro.
Right.
The post focus group will be not only to discuss findings, but maybe to, what you're saying, I think, Becca, is to compare what those results were compared to your own experiences.
Yes, yes.
And how do I fit into this? What am I going to do here?
Well, I think then you should then reflect on all of that, what we're saying and those findings together. So you're going to synthesize it all together to what you think has the most bearing on you as an instructor for setting up,
yeah,
the course.
Yeah, and the takeaway, I think, would be, the takeaway is, I believe in the title somewhere, do we talk about the lessons or something like that? In other words, what we want to end up with, or
Right.
some sort of insights, whatever, to share with people in terms of what makes for an effective or not effective online environment, right?
Yeah. I mean, it'd be awesome if we could then from this write a book about best practices in online doctoral instruction.
I think that'd be awesome.
Well,
Or even a handbook.
Yeah.
Let me say this. Actually, do you guys know Adam Sullivan? Did you ever interact? He was one of the online people who's now just left, but the school. But we talked about writing a book on that. But you got people that claim they want to do stuff.
Right.
And when it actually comes down to it, writing is a lot of hard work and discipline. So that's sort of filtered out. So the highway is clear for me to do something like that. And especially because, Becca, you teach online.
Right.
Who else? Has anybody else taught online?
I'm applying for an online teaching job now.
Okay. So it's not just me. And wow, what we could do is, we could build on this study to actually develop a book on online learning and teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think it'd be great.
I think that to go with what Becca said is so important, and I think it might make this project even a little bit challenging, is the evolution of the person in the program. So if you have the focus group at one part, and then you redo it, that person will have evolved more in the program. And I can tell you, I don't know if I'm speaking for our whole group here, but I think after our first year, we had an idea of what we thought the professors were like, what was considered a good professor, the way their shell was set up, program collaboration. And then as we continued to move through the program, what we thought was good and or bad maybe ended up being something different based upon what came down the pike further.
Well, that kind of stuff, what you're talking about, is great reflections from real live online graduates, i.e. the 4 of you. So yeah, that's very important. Okay, good. So
Jen, maybe for a minute, if we could just brainstorm. I really liked where Jen was going with that. So in this focus group, I mean, to me, it sort of gets chunked up into a few areas, right? I mean, we're going to assess sort of the instructor, him or her, right?
Well, I think we want to honestly stay away in a sense from instructor, but rather, I mean, you have to, when you think of instructional practices, obviously you connect it to certain instructors who use those practices. But I think we want to focus on the.
I don't agree.
But having said that, no, yeah, having said that, I think there's nothing wrong with focusing on personal characteristics of online instructors. We cannot scientize teaching to the point. You're right, Ken. We can't. You know, we can have these practices like, okay, this guy uses Google Docs, is great, it's effective. Google Docs is effective. This is what I found to be good. This is bad. But I think it would play right into the hands of the quantitative people. Talking now with this side of my mouth, play right into the hands of the quantitative people to think that you can abstract teaching just into principles. You cannot separate the characteristics of a teacher from things like caring, sensitivity, all that kind of soft stuff that people in the quantitative scientific camp will say, yeah, that's kind of nice, but what we really want is this hard data. Well, that's bullcrap, as we know. Because you cannot separate good teaching from the teachers.
If you're an instructor, I mean, you sort of you were at one end of the extreme from my perspective. I mean, you did an introductory video, you talked to us, you engaged us, you were timely with feedback. And we had the other experience as well. We had people that we never talked to, never did an introductory comment, never did the fundamentals of instruction. And
didn't grade for maybe 4 weeks, like no feedback, like.
So I think that to not assess sort of the instruction, I think would be a gap here.
Why do I know who you're talking about? But let me say this.
Don't need to name names, but
Let's not.
That's another.
I don't want to ruin my morning.
That's another thing. And I'm very honest when I say this. When I first started teaching online, not in this program, where did I? Oh, it was actually, I was teaching some master's level online stuff before I started teaching doctoral, or when I was teaching doctoral on ground, back starting at cohort 4. I thought I doing a great job along my regimented mode of teaching when I first started teaching that. You know, I put up a syllabus, I put up these things, I this and that, you know, do this, check that, do that. But what was lacking was the utter human interaction that you need to establish online. And what brought that to bear for me, again, I'm writing my whole part right now. I know what I'm going to say at the end. I'm done. Was that, you know, in my class, in my master's level class, I'll never forget this, and I may have mentioned it to you guys before. I don't know. Turned out I had 2 students from the country of India. They were in India, and knowing nothing about India, but then all of a sudden it started hitting me. I wonder if these guys are like sitting under a tree somewhere outside a cafe, you know, and here I set up the syllabus and this stuff, and I expect they're going to understand everything that I'm asking them to do. There was that complete lack of being present. You got to be present, I think, in online teaching.
And you have to figure out how to make your personhood known in a way that's really palpable and tangible. And you did a great job at that. Like through your typewritten word, you can sense your personality. Some professors can't do that, or they struggle with it, need some instruction.
Well, that's the kind of thing. No, those are important things. And Ken, I was nixing you in the beginning to say we don't want to name names.
No.
I mean, there's literature out there. I know who did a study on that. One of our students on it might be in one of our doctorate. It's called this I'm pretty sure it is actually. Soft, what they call soft skills.
Soft skills.
Yeah.
I hate when, when they say something like that. First of all, it sounds like, when you say soft sciences, soft skills, somehow it means, yeah, it's kind of like not as important. But whatever. The point is, it's skills that they can't get their little nitty gritty hands around and put variables in them and measure it, But those kind of things are things that we have to be humble enough to say, you know what? We can't measure every little thing about that. It's like the whole thing about pornography, the whole saying about, I don't know what pornography is, but I know it when I see it. Something like that. It's like good teaching. Sometimes, we can try to isolate these practices, which we need to do in online. There's certain things that probably there may be some disagreement among you and Shannon about the value of using Collaborate. Just as an instance. But the point is that these practices, there's going to be variation there, but I'm really glad you brought this up. We need a section in this paper called the personal characteristics of the instructor, of an online instructor. I don't know how you get away from that. How do you get away from that?
Because I think some of it is rudimentary, right? Like, did your instructor reach out and do an introduction to sort of walk you through the objectives of the course? Were you able to build a rapport with that instructor despite the fact that they were online? And then those answers, I think, help shape the rest of it, which is, I may have had a horrible experience, but it started bad from day one.
Right.
Or, everything was, I think that's
here's
anchor for us.
like, you know what, Ken, can you get up to the research questions? We have them, don't we, somewhere?
Yep. I was just trying to capture the questionnaire stuff down there.
Yeah, well, let's look at our research questions. Oh, these are the things I worked on, isn't it? Let's look at those, because remember, the questionnaire questions. Well, first of all, the way we've got this set up, we are going to go from our research questions to our focus group. And the purpose of our focus group is to, based on research questions that we agree on, we're going to come up with the questions on the questionnaire. We're going to develop the instrument, right?
Yep.
So the title and these research questions are extremely important, because that's going to guide our focus group and the questionnaire.
I agree with you completely. Do you think it would be helpful if we changed? I personally don't think we should use Blackboard, but maybe others do.
Let's right now get into these research questions. Let's do that kind of stuff. Take that out, whatever you want to do.
Why don't you just call it learning management system?
Exactly.
I couldn't think of that word when I was writing that, but yeah, put that in there. Yeah. So
otherwise, that may ding them a little bit, and that may not be the best thing for us to do.
Well, here's the question. Here's the question. How about if we kind of go through these and see if these, what did I do here? Oh, I see. I put ideas and then I put the colon after that. So let's first come to some sort of consensus. Do these things capture what we want? Like the first one is physical and functional layout of the LMS. 2 is instructional practices. 3 is assessment practices. 4 is collaborative learning. 5 is innovative ideas.
And then there's 5 of us, and each one of us could take one of those research questions and develop the questionnaire questions. Is that what you're thinking?
I don't know. First of all, I think we need to look at these research questions in the way they're laid out, and let's critique them right now. Okay.
Well, do you think you need, I mean, we've talked a lot about teachers who don't give timely feedback, who weren't able to make themselves present and exude care online. Do you think we need something about the teacher-student relationship?
Yeah, I think what we just talked about and what's missing here is the personal characteristics of the I don't know how else to say it. We talked about that kind of stuff that relates to the person of the instructor,
Yeah.
self or herself. Should we add a question? It says personal characteristics or something like that?
Yeah. Personal characteristics and presence of the instructor. I don't know. Maybe we need to think about it.
See, this number 2, the instructional practices, then that might even be in our title, to be honest with you. But instructional practices, of course, refer to actual things that instructors do as a matter of course, like setting up.
I think that's more the pedagogy approach, right? Like what was their instructional approach and how did they go about delivering it?
Yes. Yeah.
Unlike number 3 now, which is really their rapport, soft skills, engagement.
Well, why don't you say personal characteristics of the instructor, colon, and then ask questions on number 3. Personal characteristics, just get rid of in presence of the instructor, colon.
Yep.
Now, what is it? What questions do you want to ask? Should we ask? Personal characteristics.
Level of engagement. I mean,
start off with a question. What?
Technology experience?
No, this would be under the personal characteristics.
Oh.
I think the student teacher relationship, something about, yeah, so I mean, it's going to tie together like the amount of time that they invested in reaching out to the students, engaging with them in dialogue. And I don't know, something about, you know, how I notice this is always on a survey, like how much that student felt that instructor cared about him or her.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Keep talking there.
I'm randomly typing and I'll go back and we can wordsmith. I just.
Right. See, this is a book. I don't do this.
It's upside down.
No, is that upside down?
Yeah.
Try. Is that upside down?
No, that's good. That's good.
Okay, this is a book that I use in master's and undergrad educational psychology, learning theory. But the point about this is it's called Developing a Learning Classroom, Moving Beyond Management Through Relationships, Relevance, and Rigor. I wished I would have written this book. This book is unbelievable, and it's just they talk about this, Cooper and Garner. At the end of each chapter, they have a little table that differentiates between what they call a learning classroom and a managed classroom. When I look at this stuff, it applies as much. Let me pick one just at random to give you an idea that might help us get to this personal characteristic. I don't even know what this chapter is, but okay, one just real quick. Perspective on students in a learning classroom versus a managed classroom. And this is called Who Are the Students We Teach? A learning classroom, the focus is on getting to know students to make teaching and learning relevant for students. In a managed classroom, the focus is on delivering content with expectations that students take care of their own issues. That's just one example, okay? And there's like, in the end of each one of these chapters, it differentiates between a managed classroom and a learning classroom. Now, I personally, in my reflection stuff, or what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to be drawing heavily on this because this is all about the argument of these authors is there needs to be this sequence: first relationships, then relevance in what you teach, and then rigor. And oftentimes what we do is we elevate rigor to number 1. Oh, we got to have this rigorous curriculum and all this well, guess what? If you have a rigorous curriculum and you don't take time to establish a relationship with students and to make sure what you're teaching connects in some way to their interests, you might as well be talking to this coffee cup right here. So I think what I personally see on this question, this number 3, is how I feel to care. Yeah, that sort of thing. I think that's going to get to it. And then I can, in terms of, from an instructor perspective, I'm going to draw heavily on this at the end in terms of interpreting that.
Well, and you know what, Dr. B, I feel like when you're in person, you have to put so much less emphasis on striking that personal connection because you're there in person. So you can emphasize that rigor more while still simultaneously establishing that personal connection with the students. But you don't have that online. You have to actively pursue and establish your personal presence to a degree that you just don't have to on ground. So I think that's why the emphasis has to be placed there intentionally online, much more so than you would on ground, just because you lack that personal presence because you're not face to face.
And
I also think that the reason why rigor becomes first in most professors, instructors' minds is because it justifies what they're doing to the university. It has to be a balance between what the staff needs to show that they're actually meeting the needs of the curriculum and all the objectives and the goals and everything. But, you know, in the innovative ideas, I didn't really read the question yet, but, you know, one of my fortes is creativity in the classroom because of my profession. It's really hard to bring a car accident into a classroom. So, you know, short of taking that person out to a car accident, how do we put that in front of their eyes and say, function, show me what you would do after we teach them what to do. So, you know, that relationship, seeing the person, and I can see you doing this, Dr. B, in your very first class, when you do your collaboration, have your students draw a picture of themselves, and instead of showing their person, they have the picture up as, you know, for the first 10 minutes, and then you say, show me the person. Like, you know what I mean? You go from 2 dimension to 3 dimension. Just that one small little thing can actually change what you think and how you feel about that person.
what I do is, in my sick and less than great way, is I try to use as much humor as possible online. You know, for an example, these nurses that I'm teaching learning theory, which that book is part of it right now, to nurses. And they have been so drilled. I mean, you want nurses, you know, when you have a nurse, you're sick, you want
a tough group,
comforting nurse. Well, and they are, and I love nurses, but they are trained in such a way that it takes a long time for them to quit on the discussion boards, and some of them still do it. Every time they converse, we're talking, they have to write the reference number in the pages of where they get their ideas from. And I tell them that, you know, we're on this online discussion, we're not so much looking for, hey, you gotta like embed this in exactly what you read.
Documentation.
I want that creativity to flow into the discussions. One of the things, by the way, and take this and think about it, see if we can include it somehow. One of the things that nurses big time do today is simulation centers. You're talking, Jen, about the accident stuff. These nurses go through these simulation things with these, what do I call them? Intelligent dummies, I don't know, these robots things or whatever. And they go into simulation centers and they're told this about this patient.
I hate it.
This and that, this and that. They have a briefing, they have debriefings, they got all this stuff. And these simulations, the more I hear about what they do, the more I would like to be able to somehow bring simulations more into the classroom. In my on-ground classes, I have dramatizations. I have students dramatize a lot of stuff, whether it happens to be in a critical readings class, whether it's in any of my classes, undergrad, master's, doctoral. I have a lot of dramatizations that students have to do. And I kind of think of that as a simulation, because what they do is they set up, for example, a classroom, and they have to do stuff. I'm writing a paper right now, actually, for this journal out of Canada on, they wanted something on performances. So I'm showing them how I use performances in a classroom. I'm using my undergrad as an example. So
Dr. B, then would that go back to maybe instructional practices, or could we refer to that as instructional techniques and get into, you know, what types of, you know, not every instructor uses every feature available in Blackboard. So,
well, I don't
I mean,
know. See, I don't know. What you could say instructional methods. In our title, we talk about practices. I don't know. Whatever you guys think's more directly hits that. I think what we want to separate between number 2 and number 3, in, you know, that the stuff that is quantifiable, or the stuff that you can see, observable, this instructor or these kind of practices like using Collaborate is an effective tool. Personal characteristics is something that we talked about that's kind of intangible, but it does revolve around the idea of conveying the idea of caring for students.
How about, would their teaching philosophy fit in either one of those?
Yes, probably. You know what? See, remember what we're doing here. We're developing these research questions so that from these research questions, we're going to be developing the questionnaire with the questions that we're going to ask people, right? So the idea about personal characteristics is instructor. To what extent did the instructor engage the student?
Well, I think that's that whole piece in this third one. We're trying to better understand, was there a connection that was built between the instructor and the student? And did that help or hurt the relationship and the overall learning experience?
Yeah, and actually what Jen said about the personal philosophies, oftentimes there is no conscious philosophy, right?
Yeah.
But somebody that puts rigor before relationships and teaching, if you probably put them against the wall and ask them, they would say something like, the most important thing is that I got to make sure students are able to do analysis of variance or whatever it is, right? So.
In the basement?
So what else does anybody have to say about these research questions? Because we should kind of.
I agree with Jen. I think if we, at a first pass, just assign all of us take one of these, and just down here, I'll create a bucket down here for all 5. I think we go in and just start listing.
Now, but there's 6, but you know what? Those innovative ideas might really flow from.
Yes.
You know, our responses to those other 5, and they might flow from our reflections on the questionnaire responses.
I agree.
Well, I think what I didn't want to, yeah, that's fine. One thing I always end a questionnaire with is, well, you can take it out if you want, is at the end of a questionnaire, I always ask an interview, questionnaire, whatever, what else do you have to add that we didn't talk about that you think could make for a more effective online learning environment or something like that? So we can't accept that. We don't want to believe that that we've asked in these, let's say, top 5 research questions and their subsequent questions, that we have asked everything. All of a sudden, I'm sitting here as a student, and if somebody then asks me at the end, well, do you have anything else you've thought? Well, you know what? Now that you mention it, I've noticed that the most effective thing I've noticed is this, now that I think about it. Because remember, when a student takes a questionnaire, when anybody does a questionnaire, they're not just responding. They are learning right then. They're thinking right then. So they're actually reflecting like we are right now and changing their ideas because they are learning as they are going through these questions. So the last thing you should always ask at the end is something like, okay, based on everything we talked about and your experiences, do you have anything else that you would like to share in terms of this?
Can I ask it? I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
Well, I guess what I'm going to say is, if I understand Becca, we can eliminate number 6 right now and just work on the top 5?
Yeah, we could do that if you have that other question, because really what might come forth in our recommendations are those innovative
Yeah,
ideas.
so Ken,
Yeah, so
why don't you
can you,
take it out then?
instead of eliminating it, I mean, take it out, yes, but can we make it so that we don't forget? You know what I mean? Like keep it in the back of our brain when we're developing our.
Yeah.
I will not forget the last
Okay.
question.
And I have a question that might muddy the waters. Dr. B, you had asked early on, what am I going to do? What can I do? And as we're all talking, I think we're getting your perspective, but could you, or could we, or could you develop a small questionnaire to ask one or two other online professors that you develop into thoughts of, or is that too deep for this project? Did I throw mud at it?
I think that for me, this is a learning experience. So at the end, I see my reflections as being something like, you know, when I started off to study, we started off this collaborative thing. This is kind of like where I was, or the things I thought was important. And some of these things have been confirmed and other things have not been, and other new ideas. So I think for me, I think the results of the study are gonna be my fodder. F-O-D-D-E-R.
So here, I do have to drop in a couple of minutes. I'm sorry, but why don't I do this? I'll create a table down here at the end.
Yeah.
Each of these questions.
Okay. Who wants to do what?
That's what I was going to say. Does anybody have a preference?
I don't care. Yeah. Why don't you pick? Why don't you like put somebody's name to each one?
Right.
And since Shannon's not here, she has to take what's left.
Oh, poor Shannon.
I like 4, the assessment practices. I work a lot in assessment, so then
Yeah, put that with Becca then.
I like 5.
I like 3.
Okay, so I'm left with 2 or 1.
Right.
Yeah, but see, well, I guess I can. I'm not answering the question.
No, you're just building the question.
Saying, what questions would I ask? Okay, so I can do either one. I'll do 2, and then we'll leave number 1 for Shannon. Okay.
And Jen, you said 5, right?
Yeah, and do we want to put a limit on number of questions so that, you know, we're all kind of in the same ballpark? Or no?
Yeah, no, I think that might help us to focus. What do you want to say? 3 to 5 or something like that? Or
Yeah.
Well, how long do we want the questionnaire to be?
yeah, that's a good point. You don't want.
I would say let's start with 3 to 5 apiece for now and see where we land.
Yeah, because you don't want, you know, when you have to do a questionnaire, if it's like real long, you know, you're not going to do it. But if it's only,
Right.
how many of them do you want to be closed-ended insofar as being multiple choice
that's good.
versus open-ended? Because the more open-ended, we're going to get less participation.
And it's harder to.
Maybe we should only
That's
have one open-ended question per question.
You know what we could do? Maybe under each one of those things, if we come up with, let's say, two or three closed-ended ones,
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3, maybe then how we capture that about anything else you want to add. What if we say that under each one of those? And say, for the open-ended question, is there anything else about the physical layout or anything else about instructional practices that you want to add? That way it helps the respondent not just think, you know, globally like this, but okay, you're under physical layout. Okay, thinking of maybe the question, the last one, the open-ended, the one open-ended, like say for physical layout, would say something like, thinking of the physical layout of an online environment, what else, what other ideas or what things do you strike you as more important? Any other things you can think of? What do you think of that?
I like that.
And
Okay.
that way we would have, I'm envisioning something like maybe 2 or 3 questions, closed-ended questions per section and 1 open-ended. So with 5 questions, we would have maybe 15 to 20 total questions.
Yep.
And then what's still the very, very last question, we could say, okay, thank you very much. Thinking all, is there anything else you want to add? Just to throw that in there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you think of that? Could you
I think that sounds manageable.
understand what I mean? So,
I like it. I have, so Likert scale, correct? And which choices are?
let's talk about that quickly. What do you want to do in a closed-ended? From a scale of, on a scale of, let's start low to high, by the way. Let's say least to greatest,
Okay.
right? And in terms of a Likert type scale, there's an argument as to the number.
Right.
Some people say if you have 5, you get too many people that go right in the middle. If you have 4, it forces like
Right.
extremely bad, blah, blah, and then good, very good. It forces them. On the other hand, you might miss people who legitimately say, you know what, So what do you think?
Becca, I'm deferring to you because I feel like you probably have the best answer for this.
I don't know. They both have pluses and minuses. I guess I like the 1 to 4 scale,
So
but that's just personal opinion.
let's think that it would be a 1 to 4 scale, and just for thinking purposes, we don't have to, adhere exactly to this, but 1 would be whatever words we want to use. 1 would be very bad. 4 would be very good. 2 would be somewhat bad. I don't have to use the word bad, but you understand what I mean?
Right.
Right.
And the 3rd one would be somewhat good,
Yep.
something like that.
I like that.
Now, what you got to think about is in terms of analysis, because when it comes down to it, what you want to do, more than likely, if you get this, first of all, you do this little frequency thing, here's the number of 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, it still comes down to a qualitative judgment. Do you consider 3 and 4 to be like
The same.
giving evidence of support? And in other words, what I'm saying is that when backwards, when you get to analysis, you really got to think about, what does it mean? If somebody says,
Here's what I would say, because I use that 1 to 4 rating a lot for assessment, like when we're reporting accreditation assessment.
yep,
Usually the 3 and 4 are considered sufficient or exceed,
yeah.
expectations, and then the 1 and 2 would fail.
So in other words, from a human perception standpoint, I as a respondent, if I really feel, you know what, it really sucks, I'm going to put a 1. And if it's like, it's a 2, but so that's the respondent. So we have that sensitivity from the respondent side,
Right.
but on the reporting analysis side, as instructors and designers, if somebody says it's like kind of bad, not really sucky, but somewhat sucky, well, we don't want to develop something that's somewhat sucky.
Right.
I agree with
right.
you.
I agree.
Probably end up collapsing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, but from a respondent sensitivity perspective, we want to give them the opportunity to say, this really sucks, or this somewhat sucks.
Right.
Yeah.
Or some, yeah, so that's good. Okay, we'll go with a 4 point for now.
Okay. And then, I'm sorry, I have all these questions. I'm trying to, because I'll forget. When do you want the deadline for the questions? When do you want us to have those done for?
Well, what do you guys think? And what are we going to do? We're going to get back together for focus group 2.
Yeah. Let's like maybe sometime in June. Like, I don't want to drag this out.
Oh, it's got to
I
be.
agree.
Yeah.
Is a
Yeah.
Saturday good or not?
For me,
This is good with me.
Yeah. Now wait,
wanna
should we
do
double?
it?
Shannon's moving, so
15th,
yeah, maybe we should give 2 weeks. That way Shannon can get settled.
9 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, hold on a second.
Or not?
9 works for me, but I would only have an hour, probably.
You know what? We shouldn't do more than an hour. I think,
Yeah.
don't let me bullshit so much, you know, let's you know, get to it. But I do think that, don't forget, the other thing we got looming is we kind of need
IRB, don't we?
Yeah, we kind of need the instrument because we
So we
need,
can get-
we don't have to go through, you know, some committee other than the IRB, but we need to send this to the IRB, and we need to have enough literature cited. Some of
Maybe,
the people-
maybe we should aim for the 8th. I mean, because we're just talking about questions. Maybe Shannon can do that. Ken, has she fully moved, or she's moving? I forget.
She's moving, but
Moving, okay. But maybe she'd be able to swing the questions by this Saturday. That way we could aim to like really crank out that IRB by the 3rd week of June.
I'm in trouble for the 8th. I have to work that morning.
Okay.
So I could probably do earlier than 9. I might be able to make that work, but I have a PR detail that starts at 10. So
I mean, I'm willing to do 8.
Yeah, I could do 8.
if 8's not okay, I mean, like 8:30 would probably work for me. And even if I had 45 minutes.
Fine.
Sure.
Ken, just do me a favor. Now, you're going to do the Zoom thing link, but do me another favor if you can remember. Send me the link for this, what are we working on? What's this called? Google
This is our
Doc?
Google Doc.
Yeah, if you could send me that, just so I can get into this quickly.
yeah.
And so, can you go up to the research questions real quick? I want to make sure that I know which one I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, before I do that, are you okay with, or is everybody okay with what I just did here? I created a
Yeah,
table.
I like that.
I do too.
Oh, that's where you want us to, oh, you want us to go right in there and do that. That's good.
Yeah.
So if I go in there, I can,
You can come right down to here where it says Dr. Bernauer and put question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4, question 5. Just type it in there.
and what, now, as we write in those questions, does the thing expand?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
because
Dr. B-
remember what we want to do is we want to put our last question for each of us. Ken, I don't know who's going to talk to Shannon or how she's going to get this, but the last question should be something like,
I put that in the bullets above saying,
Yeah.
what the final question should be open.
there you go. Very good. Okay, yeah. Well, you don't say final question there, do you? Where is it?
Well, the final question of each section, how's that?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so you give us little directions and all that kind of stuff.
I put the Likert scale. I mean, we can change it, but we're saying we're going to use 1 to 4.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. See, now I'm starting to change my mind about this devil's work. This
Okay. Well, don't change your mind yet, Dr. B. Just a word of caution.
no, this is great though. We're collaborating in real time and doing this.
Hey, Becca, could I ask you one last question? Because I think you were really on to it. Up here in these research questions, the one I'm going to take is sort of, now that we've talked more about this, I don't like this personal characteristics of the instructor. That sounds very dirty. I almost feel like it should be the personal connection or personal rapport or engagement with the instructor.
I like that.
as the
Yeah.
category.
Personal connection and engagement of the instructor, I think, hits.
Now, who's ever doing that, or no, I'm sorry. Whenever we get, I know that we have to have a certain amount of literature with references to throw into that IRB thing. Else
Right.
They feel like you don't know what you're doing. But I think when we actually flesh out in more detail. So wait a minute. Should our literature review parallel each of those questions? In other words, should we have a section of literature review? Ken, can you go to those research questions again?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe did we already decide who's doing what, but should we have anything, you see what I'm saying? Should we have in our literature review, should we follow sort of,
I definitely think for the article we should. I'm worried about, I think probably what we have there right now exceeds the length that we can have even for the IRB. Isn't it only like 400 words? It's really small.
I don't know. But I see what you're saying. You're good. You're thinking ahead. You're saying, hey, we're gonna do this pilot thing down at Nova, and then we're going to work on this thing and submit it to some And Ken's elected to find out what journal we should try to submit to.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, I don't have anything else going on.
Hey, Dr. B, because this is on my brain, just if you're going to type your stuff in a Word document and then cut and paste, you need to know that Word and Google Docs do not work very well together. So you should try to do all of your work in the Google Doc.
I actually did that, believe it or not, much to my heartbreak. When I did that stuff, I actually did it right in Google Docs, and therefore I don't have my hard copy. Although I think you can download that, right?
You can, yeah.
Yeah.
If you look, Dr. B, if you look here where it says File, whoops, File, and you go to Download As.
Oh, there you go.
You
Yeah.
can download this into Microsoft Word.
Wait,
Yeah,
where are you, Ken?
Very
Right
good.
here.
Or you could do a PDF if you
Or a
don't want
PDF,
any
yeah.
formatting to change.
So let me ask you this question, and I don't necessarily have to do it this way, but if I downloaded this whole Google Docs thing, and then this would probably screw things up. If I worked on it as a Microsoft Word doc, you can't upload the whole thing then, right?
don't do
Yeah,
that.
you can upload the whole thing.
Yeah, but wouldn't that mess you folks?
It'll be out of, he'll put us
Yeah,
out of
you
sync.
probably just need to
Be out
copy
of sync.
and paste.
Yeah, I won't do that. I am going to bite the bullet and I'm going to work up in this Google Docs thing. And then what I'll do is for my own records, I'll download it.
And just text one of us. If you're in there and you have a problem, we'll jump on the phone with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so do me a favor, Ken, as I said, send me that link. Can you
Okay.
do that?
Yep, and you,
Go ahead.
and then you
Particular
just send-
tables don't work well together.
That's what I was gonna say. The worst thing is trying to copy and paste a table or table cell.
Right.
The other stuff's more manageable.
Okay. Okay, did we decide when we're tentatively gonna get together, or we not?
June 8th at 8:30, is that what we said?
That's
Well,
a week.
I'll send out the invitation.
Find out who can do that, but we're the 8th, I'm gonna just put it in a tentatively in my iPad here. I'm gonna say 8,
Next to your bread machine.
8:30,
In your office.
yeah, 8:30, okay. And I'll put a question mark.
And then the questions, we're saying we want those back by then? Completed by then?
I think that's a good
because
idea.
I think, yeah, it should, well, that's a good point. We should be working in there so that
Yes.
by the 8th of June, there's
Yeah.
stuff on those tables so that we could then chat back and forth. And we got to document this about these, who might be able to keep track of that? Like what we did just now. In
Well,
terms
he
of the
recorded it.
methodology,
It's all done, and it's recorded.
well, I mean, when we write it up and if we have methods or something like that, we could say, we met, our collaboration through
Right.
focus groups was multimodal.
I recorded this session.
Because we're gonna send it to Shannon.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right.
Hi,
Well,
Shannon. We love you. We miss you.
yes. And by the way, Shannon, because you weren't here, you got stuck with question 1.
Right.
That's all. Okay. Anything else?
Ken, when you record this, does it just audio or does it audio and video?
It's both. The only problem is size, so I'll probably have to push it out to YouTube and
Oh, okay.
link back to it because the size will be big.
Will you be able to send that link to all of us
Yeah.
so we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
use that as references?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
This is good. This is good. The new meets the old. The new meets the old. The new and the
Jim,
old.
I'm sorry, I do have one last question. So once this is done, do you envision that's when we would get back together then and collaborate about our thoughts?
Yeah. Well,
Categories?
we're
Like
all-
what did we like, what didn't we
We're all
like?
going to write stuff in these questions, and then we're going to meet hopefully next Saturday at 8:30. And at that point, what I would like to see is we should sort of finalize the questionnaire, because what we then would have enough to send to the IRB and say, okay, you guys have enough references, don't you, in that literature stuff that I could copy and paste some crap. I don't want to call it crap. I can pick some stuff, throw it in there, and then put the research questions, and I can also attach the instrument. That should do it for them.
Yeah.
Of course, we haven't actually, I got to talk to Semich and now about this because we gotta get, we gotta send the stuff to the
Right.
school.
Who's your secretary now?
Well, I think the new person, her name is Lisa something, but here's the problem. Right now, and you remember, our office is there, where Dr. Semich was, he still is right now. And then where the dean's office was, Philip is still in there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so what's going to happen? I don't know. I mean, I think Dr. Semich will move in where Philip is.
Okay.
Maybe Fuller will move where Semich is. I don't know where the heck Philip's going, but he's, of course, not in our school anymore.
Right.
So
Isn't it easier to just change the name tags than to move the whole office?
we're nursing, we're education and nursing and psychology right now, whatever.
So what school does Phil move to?
Well, I believe that's still called, I don't know if they changed the name or not, but it's still, it's social sciences.
Right. Okay.
But I think they actually then picked up some other, well, first of all, economics is now part of them, which wasn't.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so actually, I mean, when all is said and done, any move like that is made for money reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in essence, I think, honestly, having nursing and psychology in the School of Education does make a lot of sense.
Well, they're professional programs. I'm surprised they didn't put business with you and make it all the professional programs.
I think you can't touch business because business was the founding cornerstone.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So, that's still a lot of people still think of RMU means business.
Got
it. Yeah. My architecture teacher in high school, her best friend, she died now a couple of years ago, but her best friend, her father started RMU. So that's kind of cool. But I wanted to offer.
You started RMU?
Yeah, so we're talking like in 1920 something or something.
Well, it began in 1921.
As a business school, right?
Well, I know RMU was founded in 1921, so it's probably, yeah.
Yeah. I love Question Pro and I love working in it. So when you give the go ahead, I can start developing this.
Yeah, the only thing I ask is that'd be great, but I would like to collaborate with you in some way to learn how to use that. I can find fault in every technology program. I always wonder why they don't do things the way I want to do them, and they don't.
Right.
But I have to learn to give and take. So yeah, that's fine. That's good. I like that.
Okay, cool.
Good.
Guys, I have to go, but I will talk to you all soon. I'll get the invitation sent out for the 8th.
Great. I've got to go too. I got to go work concession stand up at the basketball game.
All right.
God bless you.
I got to go
make bread.
Yeah, go take care of your bread.
And then I got to get my bread, and then I hope to have time to go to a microbrewery and drink beer.
Oh, fun. Have a good time.
Have fun.
Have one for me.
Bye.
It's good seeing you guys.
Good seeing
Bye.
you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.